What's going on, everybody? C4 here. It is time for the mock draft. My first NFL mock draft for the entirety of the league. I've already done one with the Philadelphia Eagles a couple weeks ago. If you haven't checked that out, go do so. But I felt like December is roughly around the time that we kind of get a clear idea of roughly, like, I'd say within 5 picks, what team's going to pick where outside of the playoff teams. We know what underclassmen are going to declare. We know what kind of college prospects we're dealing with. So I feel it's time now to release my first official NFL mock draft. The order is based off of week 11, and the tiebreakers are separated by strength of schedule for the remaining games of the NFL season. And for each team, I give kind of 3 positions I think they could really try to improve upon. And yeah, it's all with the assumption that no trades happen in the draft and no free agency moves have begun, because I know some of these teams could definitely cross off a couple of these position needs from free agency, but you know, it's a mock draft. So at number 1, we have the Cleveland Browns. And for the Browns, I have 3 positions of needs. Obviously, 1, you can go best player available. Browns just need more talent on that roster. Number 2 would be wide receiver. I think you got to get a playmaker if Kaiser is going to be their long-term option. And number 3, I have corner. I just think they don't have, you know, their secondaries, yeah, not bad. McCourty, Jamar Taylor, Body Calhoun, those guys are serviceable, but they don't have a young guy in place, a guy that's sub 25. That is a premier outside corner. McCoy was kind of brought in on a 1-year Band-Aid type deal, and he's definitely playing really, really well. But I think a young franchise corner could do them wonders after they moved on from Mr. Joe Hayden. So overall, for the, you know, none of those two positions I just talked about really matter, because I have the Browns taking Saquon Barkley, the running back from Penn State. They invested heavily in the offensive line. You have Deshaun Kaiser, a young quarterback they invested a 2nd-round pick in last year. So there you go. What else do they need? Crowell set to be a free agent. Bring in Saquon Barkley, who I think is the pound-for-pound best player in this year's draft class. Become a run-first team, which kind of lessens the load on Kaiser. Be a team that gives Saquon Barkley 25 carries a game. Run him like Leonard Fournette was running with the Jaguars, or Dalvin Cook was with the Minnesota Vikings. And then you kind of get a more clear picture next season of what Deshaun Kaiser could be. Is he going to be a serviceable QB that can work with a good running game and be like the second option, kind of like Dak Prescott a little bit? Okay, obviously Dak Prescott's a better quarterback than Kaiser is right now, but the same kind of scenario of how they use the quarterback. They're a run-first team, and they can play out the play action, which I think would much benefit the strengths of Deshaun Kaiser and minimize his weaknesses. Plus, the Browns' current running back one, Isaiah Crowell, is set to be a free agent. So here you go, kind of, you know, filling in a hole with a big-time upgrade. But again, the Browns here definitely could be looking to trade back, acquire some more picks. Prime candidate. Going to pick number 2, much like the Browns, the 49ers are here, and they could be another team that would look to try to trade back. But if not, their 3 big positions for me are best player available. Again, very much like the Browns, need way more talent on this team. I have offensive line and wide receiver. So with the 49ers, you're going to assume that next year Garoppolo will be playing on the franchise tag, and he is, you know, in their opinion, their future franchise QB. Carlos Hyde said to be a free agent. I think it'd be absolutely ridiculous for them to let Carlos Hyde leave the team. He's without a doubt the most talented playmaker there. He can really execute Kyle Shanahan's offense. He can catch the ball. He can run between the tackles. He's a power back. He's perfect. So unless they pull like a Cleveland Browns where they let Terrell Pryor leave, even though Pryor kind of got exposed a little bit in Washington, he was really good and debatably the best skill position player on the Browns that let him walk. I think that'll be a bad decision for the Niners to do with Hyde. So here's my first maybe head-scratching controversial pick here. So what we know about the Niners this year is they've been trying very hard to try to trade Joe Staley. They want to try to get some value for him. I think ultimately Joe Staley is going to get released to free up a little bit of cap space so they can maybe try to improve. Maybe at the wide receiver spot, Taylor Gabriel comes to mind from the Falcons to carry over with Shanahan to the Niners. But with him gone, they need to get a franchise tackle. And if you think Garoppolo is your franchise QB, you hopefully re-sign Carlos Hyde. You have a good running back. Tackle is where it's at, especially at this number 2 spot. They don't trade back. A top 5, maybe even top 3 pick. If it's not a quarterback or an elite skill position player, you usually go with a franchise tackle. So I'm going with Connor Williams, the tackle from Texas. Franchise. I mean, I think it's a little bit of a logjam when you're talking about the top tackles in this year's draft class. But I do believe Connor Williams is the best. Very well balanced. And if, like I said, if you get Garoppolo, get him that franchise tackle. Their offensive line definitely could be improved immensely with multiple picks, but why not start out with the number 2, get your franchise tackle in Connor Williams. Next up at pick number 3 is the New York Giants, and they're kind of starting to be like the Seattle Seahawks a little bit, where you're getting frustrated that they're not drafting offensive linemen. So the 3 big needs for the Giants are offensive line, running back, and quarterback. Now, this is another situational pick, because you're going to assume that the Giants are going to move on from that creepy looking pedophile Ben McAdoo, little pedo, little diddler. So they're going to bring in a new coach. And usually when you hire a new coach, they roughly have like a 5-year plan for that team. And Eli Manning, let's be honest, he's probably not going to be the face of that franchise for the next 5 years. He's getting really old. His play is starting to regress a little bit. It's kind of tough to truly evaluate it because the team has been utterly horrible on the offensive side of the ball, but I think they bring in a new coach. He's going to want his new quarterback because the coach is going to try to build a plan around a quarterback that's going to continue to develop and grow around. And especially with the Giants, they're not going to have a top 5 pick very often. This is just, you know, kind of a little bit of an anomaly. I'm not saying that they're going to next year be the Philadelphia Eagles and start off 10-1, but, you know, they're never a team that's a perennial top 5 pick. So this is your opportunity to get the best QB in the draft for the new coach, and that's why I'm taking Josh Rosen, the quarterback from UCLA. He can understudy for Eli Manning. I don't know what Eli's contract's exactly looking like, but let's be honest, they'll probably find a way out of it and deal him. I mean, maybe, just maybe, there's a team down in Jacksonville that has Tom Coughlin that might need just a short-term option at QB to steer the shit for the Jags' incredible defense and really good run game. Maybe. Throwing out hypotheticals, that's pretty out there. But I do believe that the number reason why you justify this Josh Rosen pick is that A, the Giants rarely are going to pick this high enough to get Eli's replacement, and B, a new head coach is going to probably want his QB, and it's probably not going to be Eli Manning. So congrats to Giants for getting, in my opinion, the best quarterback in this year's draft class and a very solid prospect. Pick number 4, we have the Denver Broncos. Their 3 positions of need are quarterback, offensive line, and best player available on the offense. Their defense has been, quite frankly, spectacular. I think Todd Davis is really the only big name that they might look to lose. But so, that's offense. This is an offensive-minded draft for the Denver Broncos. Now, there's a chance he flip-flops and returns to college, but we're looking at the quarterback spot. Sam Darnold, the quarterback from USC, is sitting right here for John Elway to go get him, go groom him. Simeon's not the answer. Paxton Lynch is not the answer. Who else do they have? Brock Lobster's not the answer. So why don't you go get yourself some Sam Darnold? Personally, I'm not super sold on Sam Darnold. He's been incredibly inconsistent, but the upside is, you know, you may have to give him the top upside in this year's draft class, at least to a pro QB comp. I mean, there's some mobile QBs that could be the next Deshaun Watson that trust me, we'll talk about a little later. But I think from as far as a pro QB with upside, you probably have to give it to Darnold because I think Rosen's a much more pro-ready right now, so he doesn't have as much upside. But I think both these guys can be very solid quarterbacks. But the Broncos go out and they get, you know, their assumed franchise QB, Darnold. You know, he probably will be rushed to start right away. There's going to be immense pressure for them because of that good defense. If we just get a solid QB that can move the chains and not turn the ball over, we might have something. Unfortunately, I mean, Sam Darnold's been a little loose with the football this year, but I think this is a tremendous fit here for the Denver Broncos, who are just dying, the fan base, to get a franchise quarterback. Moving on to pick number 5, we have the Indianapolis Colts. For the Colts, I have best player available pretty much anywhere. They need lots more talent on that team. Offensive line and edge rusher. So they have a 3-4 front. I always thought they moved to a 4-3, but I guess they still have a 3-4 front. So I have them going with Christian Wilkins, the defensive lineman from Clemson, incredibly well-rounded for 300 pounds. Would fit in real nice there on the defensive line. Anywhere, really. I mean, he's definitely an undersized nose tackle. You wouldn't want him there. But for a 3-4 defensive end, he's everything you want. He can get after the quarterback. He's not a liability against the run. Incredibly athletic from this Clemson defensive line, which is terrifying. So many people are like, why is Clemson still ranked in the you know, the playoffs in college football? It's because their defense is legit, and Christian Wilkins is debatably the best player on that defense. Great pick. This would be a tremendous pick for the Colts. You know, you're going to assume next year you have Andrew Luck healthy. Offensive line is looking... I do think offensive line wouldn't be a bad pick potentially, but for an interior, I don't think you could take Quentin Nelson. I think he'd be a good fit for the Colts. I just don't feel like you can go for Quentin Nelson right now. So yeah, man, get yourself some. You have a running back, Frank Gore will probably be gone. You got Marlon Mack, should emerge. Wide receiver, you might lose a couple guys here and there. Get yourself a defense. Build that defense so that Luck can do his thing on offense. I think Wilkins gives them the best chance. Going to pick number 6, we have the Chicago Bears, and for the Bears, we have wide receiver, offensive tackle, and best player available on defense. So for the Chicago Bears, we're going with the top wide receiver in this year's draft, now updated, Calvin Ridley, the wide receiver from Alabama. I think in terms of upside, he might not have the most upside in this year's draft class, but I think he's the safest pick. I think he's a guy that, worst case scenario, will put up like Golden Tate numbers. Best case scenario, he could definitely develop into a legit wide receiver one. I mean, so many people are trying to get me to say he's going to be the next Julio Jones just to make that, you know, comparison between Alabama wide receivers. I think Julio Jones is obviously a generational talent, whereas Calvin Ridley, I think, is just a really good college wide receiver. I do like Calvin Ridley more than I like Amari Cooper, even though Amari Cooper put up much better, well, maybe not much better, but Amari Cooper did put up better numbers at Alabama. I think Ridley is a safer pro option. We're seeing now with Amari Cooper in Oakland. I mean, the drop issues, the lack of concentration, he's really inconsistent. I think what you get with Calvin Ridley is good to great play, but very high consistency. So I think Ridley should be a tremendous pick here for the Bears. So hopefully, I mean, a popular name for Bears fans is Jarvis Landry in free agency. They got to go out there and get Mr. Trubisky some weapons. The Bears are probably the most similar team to my Philadelphia Eagles in terms of the way their roster's built and how quick they could potentially turn things around and be really competitive in 2018. But what did Philly do? They got Carson Wentz some weapons. I think Calvin Ridley is a great weapon for the Bears to add on the offensive side of the ball. Going to pick number 7, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. Their 3 needs for me is offensive line, linebacker, and then just in general, best player available. This is a very solid roster, but they're definitely underachieving. So for the Bengals, I'm going with my second tackle, which is Mike McGlinchey, the tackle from Notre Dame. It's one of those things with McGlinchey, inconsistent, you could say, but still really, really good, really high ceiling. If they can get good consistency out of them, he's going to be a legit top 10 pick. But more so, it's not really a reach because I do think McGlinchey is a fringe top 10 pick. But without a doubt, the biggest glaring option for the Cincinnati Bengals is those 2 tackle spots. Jake Fisher, Cedric Abuye. You got to do better than that. There's definitely more upside, maybe even more talent right now. If you took Mike McGlinchey at the beginning of this college season, because so many people thought he was going to declare last year, he's probably better than any tackle right now on the Cincinnati Bengals. So now, one more year of playing college, he's stronger, he's better, he's faster. He's on the Lane Johnson supplements. I think he would be a tremendous pick for the Bengals, who, new look Bengals. You have Andy Dalton now, kind of getting questions over if Andy Dalton's going to be the guy. Hopefully, they re-signed Tyler Eifert, or maybe they already did re-sign him. I don't have in my notes. I have like the free agency notes here, but I don't have if they've already been extended mid-season. But it's going to be Joe Mixon on offense, Andy Dalton here with A.J. Green. You need to protect these guys, keep them upright, create some lanes. I think Mike McGlinchey would be the best fit there. Going to pick number 8 for the Arizona Cardinals. 3 needs for them is quarterback, corner, and best player available on the offensive side of the ball. Here comes my first pick. And we're going with Lamar Jackson, the quarterback from Louisville. I'm a big fan of Lamar Jackson. I think, personally, I've said it countless times, he should go back to college, come out as a senior, get 1 year better as terms of a pocket passer. But here we go. Similarities between him and Deshaun Watson are fairly great. I think Deshaun Watson is better at reading the defenses, which is why I think he caught on so fast. But with very similar skill sets, Lamar Jackson is a better athlete. I think he has a better arm in all relation. I guess the kind of knock against Deshaun Watson was he didn't have as big of an arm as some of the other prospects. So from that standpoint, I think the success of Deshaun Watson makes Lamar Jackson a legitimate first-round prospect. The other thing is Bruce Arians is one of the better offensive minds. I think he'll be salivating at the mouth thinking of the ways he can get Lamar Jackson in. So we don't know if Carson Palmer is going to return or not. If Palmer does return, it's even better scenario because that means Lamar Jackson can get 1 year of just learning behind his belt, getting used to the offense. You can assume at some point Carson Palmer's going to get hurt and he's going to get rushed in there. But I think if I had to pick a team for Lamar Jackson to go, it would be the Arizona Cardinals. I think Bruce Arians would find a way to maximize his strengths, hide his weaknesses. And I mean, look at the weapons they have there. Larry Fitzgerald, what a safety net. What a safety net. They got to continue to build that offensive line. But, with David Johnson in that run game, plus Larry Fitzgerald to help him out, potentially Palmer returning, so you have 1 year to learn. I think this is a tremendous, tremendous fit for Lamar Jackson. I think he's going to be a stud, man. I was a diehard Deshaun Watson fan, and I definitely think that Lamar Jackson can follow in his footsteps and be as successful. Maybe not as successful as early, or definitely not put up the same kind of numbers, but successful nonetheless. Going to pick number 9. We have the Raiders, and for the Raiders, the 3 positions of need for me is offensive tackle, linebacker, and defensive back. And for the Raiders, I mean, I don't know what they're going to do with Navarro Bowman yet. I don't know if the plan is to extend him or not. He's playing pretty damn well. I don't think he's ready to hang them up, but still, even with Bowman, they still need to get linebackers. So I've been going with Malik Jefferson, the linebacker from Texas. I think in terms of tape on linebackers we have right now, he's certainly in the mix for top 3. But I think once we hit the combine, his numbers are going to be pretty much off the chain. He's an incredible athlete, really good against the run. Improving as a pass rusher, but he has that skill set, which I think with some of the other smaller linebackers, they're more of that Ryan Shazier mold, whereas Malik Jefferson can kind of do it all, but not really. I think he's one of those guys that's a really, really good jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none type linebacker, which is exactly the kind of player that the Raiders need. The Raiders need their defense to start to step it up. Outside of Khalil Mack, I think Malik Jefferson would be a tremendous pick in the right direction. Tackle could be good. I mean, you have Donald Penn, and I don't even know who the right tackle is. But I think in terms of value, passing up on a legit first-round linebacker, Good pick for the Raiders. And the Raiders have, over the last couple years, drafted really, really well. Going to the last of the top 10 picks, number 10, the Cleveland Browns. I have the Browns going with an incredibly safe pick to improve that secondary, and that is Minkah Fitzpatrick, defensive back from Alabama. When you look at the Browns, I had them at first going with Josh Jackson, the corner from Iowa, and I think Josh Jackson is going to be really, really good. But there are a lot of, Justin Gilbert vibes, like a guy that had a breakout year and is really athletic, the outside rangy guy. So I think with Josh Jackson still on the board, I think they might go with Minkah Fitzpatrick because he's a little bit safer. I mean, their secondary has been serviceable. Like I said, they had, you have Jason McCourty playing well above his pay grade. Jamar Taylor solid. Body Calhoun solid. But when you look at safeties, as I predicted, Jabril Peppers is... He's going to take a while to catch on if he ever does catch on. I still think he's going to be viewed as like a weapon guy on the defense that plays a bunch of positions. Safety is huge. Who do they have at safety? To be completely honest with you, no one. They have absolutely no one at safety. So I think a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick, it's pretty easy. It's a plug and play. He will start day one, and he could very well be as good as other late Alabama safeties like Landon Collins, Clinton Dix. You could probably throw his name right in there. He probably even has better coverage ability than those guys, as he did have extensive playing at the cornerback spot. But I do believe the Browns and the NFL will view him as a safety, and this is a home run pick for the Browns. The Browns can get Saquon Barkley, who's debatably the best player on offense, and then you got Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's debatably the best player on defense. This would be an outstanding draft for the Cleveland Browns. All right, moving on to pick number 11. This is the only pick that I have outside influence just because of rumors and stuff that really manipulate my decision. So for the Jets, their positions of need: quarterback, offensive line, and in general, best player available. So for the Jets, I'm going with Josh Allen, the quarterback from Wyoming. Now, I know everyone knows if you do the draft, they have Matt Miller, who definitely has a hard-on for Josh Allen. Seems like at times, the way he posts on social media, like he's like Josh Allen's agent. But, I've seen a couple reports saying that the Jets really are in love with Josh Allen. He will be there, and they need a quarterback. I personally don't see it, to be completely honest with you. I think there is some upside with Josh Allen. When you look at him, he does kind of play like Carson Wentz a little bit. One of those big athletes, good arm, surprisingly athletic, can run with his legs, can extend plays. I don't quite see it, though, to be completely honest with you, because this is the only pick, I would say, of all the picks that I'm not really happy making, but it just seems like with all the rumors going along, there could be smoke. But I'm going with, if there's smoke, there might be fire. And if he's sitting there and he's the guy that they're already really excited about, it makes sense from the quarterback spot for the Jets to go out and get their guy. Even though McCown has played actually fairly serviceable this year, which might also be a good scenario, because if Josh Allen, who I do think does have upside, you don't have to rush him. McCown can be serviceable. You have Allen wait and gets ready to play. I know with the success of Mitchell Trubisky, limited success, more so Deshaun Watson. Some of these guys are getting ready to push their QBs into the water, make it sink or swim as a rookie. But, there's still, you see with the Patty Mahomes approach and stuff like that, some teams are smart. They won't rush it. I think that's the Jets scenario. So, Jets going with Josh Allen. Going to pick number 12, we have the Miami Dolphins, who 3 positions of need I have as running back, offensive line, and best player available on the defense. Quentin Nelson, the offensive guard from Notre Dame, regarded as one of the safest picks in this year's draft class. I think improving that offensive line will go a long way. Even though I think they should move on from Ryan Tannehill, I think so many people in the organization believe Tannehill can be the guy. Obviously, with moving on from Jai, Mr. Mini Chip Kelly himself, Adam Gase, believes that he can get it done with Damian Williams or Kenyon Drake. And even Kenyon Drake has looked fairly impressive, to be completely honest with you. I picked him up in fantasy. So that means they go with the safest position, and you need to build up that offensive line. If you believe you have your franchise QB and you don't have a strong offensive line, it's never a bad time to draft an offensive lineman. It's never a sexy pick, but when you look at the Miami Dolphins, offensive line's not good. Bushrod's a starter. He's set to be a free agent. The rest of the roster, outside of Laramie Tunsil, do they have Laramie Tunsil? And when Pouncey's healthy, that's your offensive line. Bushrod's not great. Right tackle's not great. Left guard, I don't even know who the left guard is. So I think a home run pick, an incredibly safe pick in Quentin Nelson, is the best business for the Miami Dolphins. Going to pick number 13, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where the 3 position needs for me is defensive back, offensive line, and potentially running back, depending on what they do with Doug Martin. So for them, I have them taking Josh Jackson, the corner from Iowa. So Brent Grimes is set to be a free agent. From the sounds of things, I haven't watched a whole lot of Bucs games. It seems like my boy Vernon Hargreaves is not having as good of a sophomore season as his rookie year. So when you look at corners there, you know, if Brent Grimes leaves, that secondary is not that good. So I think you go with the best corner. He's a late riser. We don't know for sure if he's going to declare yet, which is kind of the downside of doing a mock draft this early. But from what I can see, Josh Jackson looks like an absolute stud. Great similarities between his style of play and Marshawn Lattimore and Marlon Humphrey, who are, you know, 2 rookies, one for the Ravens, one for the Saints, that are playing like fringe top 15, top 10 corners right now. And, you know, teams are going to want to try to follow in that mold. I think Josh Jackson is the closest representation to that in college football right now, and that's too good to pass up for the Bucs, who, you know, you'd assume maybe if we get a healthy James Winston, the offense will be fine, even though I do believe they should try to improve that offensive line, especially at one of the tackle spots. But that defense has been horrible. Even though they've had injuries, that secondary has not been very good. This week, actually, as of me recording, Julio put up like 250 yards. So go and get yourself a beast corner, a guy that I'm really, really high on in Josh Jackson, and pair him with Brendan Hargraves, and hopefully you can turn it all around there in that defense and not be terrible like you were this year. God, I put so much of my fantasy team hope on the Bucs with James Winston and Mike Evans. Moving on, get Josh Jackson. Moving on to number 14 is the LA Chargers. I'm never not going to call them San Diego Chargers. The LA Chargers, 3 positions in need for me are offensive tackle, quarterback, and best player available. I think Rivers has more left in the tank than a lot of people are giving credit for, and I don't think this is the year that you get his replacement. I still think with Rivers playing debatably the best football of his career these last couple weeks here in 2017, you know, that gives you a little more confidence that you can hold off, or maybe just use a pick in like the 3rd, 4th round, get a mid-round guy like maybe a Logan Woodside potentially. So that comes back to tackle, which I have them selecting Orlando Brown, the tackle from Oklahoma. Right now, the tackles for the Chargers are not good. Russell Okung is like a band-aid at best. You got Barksdale, who's I mean, when healthy, I like what they did last year with the draft, getting Dan Feeney and Forrest Lamp. And unless they, you know, really want to swing out Forrest Lamp to tackle, which they could, he could be a right tackle. I think a guy like Orlando Brown, a monster of a human being, 6'8", like 350, something like that. That's a tremendous pick to get the most out of whatever Phillip Rivers has left remaining in the tank. You got to protect him. You got to keep him upright. You got to help that run game with Melvin Gordon. We all know Anthony Lynn is a run-first type player. Build that offensive line. I think Orlando Brown, you can't go wrong with that if you're a Charger fan. Get an offensive tackle, and Orlando Brown, plenty of upside. Going to pick number 15, it's the Dallas Cowboys. 3 position needs for the Cowboys. I have linebacker, wide receiver, and just in general, best player available. For them, I'm going with Roquan Smith, the linebacker from Georgia. Really, really good. And I think you saw when Sean Lee goes down, that defense is horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. And Sean Lee goes down quite a bit. So that shows that there's 0 depth at the linebacking core. Jalen Smith is not, you know, he's not the same type of player after his injury, which is unfortunate. He was tremendous at Notre Dame. So I think, you know, a lot of people want to go D-line here, but assuming they can re-sign DeMarcus Lawrence, which I think they probably will do. I'm not 100% sure on their cap situation. But Malik Collins, David Irving, those guys are good at D tackles. DeMarcus Lawrence, if you could bring him back, is serviceable. You have Taco Charlton waiting in the wings here to start opposed to Marcus Lawrence, even though he hasn't had the best rookie season. So that means I think linebacker's a home run. I think you got to go either linebacker, or you potentially maybe look at the replacement for Jason Witten at tight end, or you add in another wide receiver. And looking at the draft board, Roquan Smith, who's been tremendous for Georgia, the best player on that defense almost by a mile, and there have been a bunch of good guys on that defense. I think that's a tremendous pick for the Cowboys, as much as it pains me to say. I mean, looking at it right now, he could probably start as your Sam or your Will. Depends on what you want. He's not the biggest guy, but he's a tremendous, tremendous linebacker, and debatably could challenge with Malik Jefferson for the top linebacker in this year's draft class. So the Cowboys get some depth at the linebacking spot, so in case Sean Lee goes down, they don't fall apart. Moving on to pick number 16, which is the Washington Redskins. And when you look at the Redskins, we're making this pick on the assumption that they are able to bring back Kirk Cousins. They don't immediately have to go over to quarterback, but we'll still say their 3 position needs are wide receiver, quarterback, and linebacker. I've been going with the second best wide receiver on the board, a guy that complements what they already have there in, you know, obviously you got to kind of consider Chris Thompson as a hybrid, but more so Jamison Crowder and Josh Doctson. And that is go get yourself a big body guy. Doxson's kind of the jump up vertical. You have the Crowder for a slot. So get your big possession wide receiver, and that is Mr. Cortland Sutton, the wide receiver from SMU. This guy is a monster, incredibly productive, kind of similar to Corey Davis a little bit in terms of a big-time prospect that, you know, level of competition will always come up. But the production speaks for itself. I mean, when you look at the team, like defensively, they're pretty good. The defense is able to keep them in games. When you look at offense, it's just like, you know, why is Chris Thompson their leading receiver? So you got to go get the best receiver available. And with Calvin Ridley already off the board, that is Mr. Cortland Sutton. Moving to pick 17, which belongs to the Buffalo Bills. Their 3 positions in need for me are wide receiver, offensive guard, and outside linebacker. I still have wide receiver there because they're probably going to lose Jordan Matthews in free agency. Zay Jones is probably going to be best suited for a slot role. You got Calvin Benjamin, who's outside. I mean, you know, he's built like a damn tight end, but he's an outside guy. But, you know, for that offense, you got to get more explosive plays. So I am selecting James Washington, the wide receiver from Oklahoma State. I think this is a little bit more of a luxury pick because they have 2 first-rounders. They don't really have to fully invest their only first-round pick in only a wide receiver. But I think James Washington brings you the kind of what they lost in Sammy Watkins. The deep threat ability. This guy's a big-time playmaker. Probably the most electrifying wide receiver in college football right now, putting up outstanding numbers at Oklahoma State with Mason Rudolph. It kind of is an offense tailored to putting up big numbers like that. But when I look at what they have in Tyrod Taylor, you know, regardless if Tyrod's the guy, they need to have more compliments at the skill position spots. Right now it's LaShawn McCoy, and we don't really know what Kelvin Benjamin's going to look like in the Bills. He hasn't played a whole lot. Zay Jones is slowly starting to get together, but I think getting a guy that can truly get himself downfield, James Washington would be an excellent fit to that Bills offense. Moving on to number 18, which is currently held by the Green Bay Packers. 3 positions in need. I have offensive line, defensive line, and in general, best player available. Now, in retrospect, I kind of really do like what they did in the draft last year. I wasn't so high on it initially, but I think going after like the defensive backs the way they did is really key. So for the Packers, Key, you see what I did there? Arden Key, the edge rusher from LSU. You know, Packers are a team for some reason, you know, outside of Nick Perry, they're just not getting the sacks. And, you know, you might want to go get someone that's a 3-4 defensive end, but there's no real, you know, pure pass rushers, guys that are incredibly dominant. Maybe if we're talking about next year's draft, the 2019 draft, there might be someone there for you. But right now, you need to get the best edge rusher. I think Clay Matthews' time has come to an end. He's kind of a shell of his former self. I think Arden Key, a guy that's going to, you know, is kind of slipping down a little bit. Hasn't had the most productive season at LSU, but I think once the combine perks up, he's going to put out some pretty eye-popping numbers, and the hype train is going to be real. This is the way you got to go. They have to go defense, I feel, unless you're going tackle or something like that. Try to improve the offensive line. They have a couple guys that's set to potentially hit free agency, but we do know for the most part Green Bay likes to extend their own. So you definitely have someone like Corey Linsley, the center. He should probably be back. Devontae Adams will probably be back, but outside of that, maybe Morgan Burnett will leave. That's why, you know, what they did last year with the DBs is really good. But when I look at that defense, I think they have to go best edge rusher, and that is going to be Arden Key, the guy that gives them the most success, the most probability to be able to get after the quarterback. That is the Key from LSU. Next up, we have the Detroit Lions at pick 19. Their 3 positions in need I have is running back, defensive line, and best player available on the offense. Now, this pick I have for them, there's a running back here sitting here that would be a tremendous pick in Darius Geis, and it paid me not to put him here, but I had to go with a guy that's in my opinion, Darius Geis, probably like, in terms of talent, at best you could have him at like between 10 and 15. Right now, I did think in general he's a first-round talent. There is a guy that I definitely believe is a top 10 talent, but just somehow found his way down here. And with, you know, what is going to potentially happen with Ziggy Ansah, we don't know, but he might be gone as a free agent. Haloti Ngata might be gone. They need to pretty much rejuvenate that defensive front. I am selecting Bradley Chubb, the defensive end from NC State. I think this guy is definitely a top 10 talent. Just so happened to slip in here. I was very surprised when I was doing this draft. There's another guy we're going to talk about in a second, but I thought Chubb, I was like, wow, I have him going here at 19. I don't think he's going to test particularly well. He's not so much of an athlete than he is. He's really kind of like Derek Barnett a little bit, who the Philadelphia Eagles selected out of Tennessee last year. So I think when you look at the Lions, they need to get more sacks. They need to get more pressure. I think it's time out with the old, in with the new. Zettle's playing really, really well. Ziggy Ansah is good, but I think in terms of like when you pay Stafford the kind of money you pay him, you know, you're not going to be able to re-sign guys like Ziggy Ansah, who probably will get a lot more money on the open market. So replace him with a younger player like Bradley Chubb, who very well can offer similar production than what you're getting from Ansah right now as a rookie. It is tough not to go with Darius Geis, but let's be honest, it's not like they draft Darius Geis, they're magically going to become a run-first team. They might get a little bit more balance. They might be able to get a 100-yard rusher, but I think Bradley Chubb replacing Ziggy Ansah would do more than having maybe a Darius Geis replace Amir Abdullah. But it's really, really close. Moving on to pick number 20, we have the Seattle Seahawks. And my 3 position needs for the Seahawks: offensive line, running back, and in general, best player available. So, you know, I do it every mock draft. I have them taking offensive lineman. We're doing it again. I have them selecting Braden Smith, the offensive lineman from Auburn. This guy here is incredibly athletic. I think he's going to potentially, I could be a little bit off, put up like that Lane Johnson type athletic numbers. He's an uber athlete, and he's very, very versatile. I'm very surprised he's never played tackle, but he's an evident offensive guard. And when you look at the, I mean, let's be honest. You got to go offensive line if you're Seattle. I think right now, with most of the Orlando Brown's already off the board. Connor Williams is already off the board. Same with Mike McGlinchey. I think Braden Smith, for my money after Quentin Nelson, is a top offensive guard. Still very much worthy of a first-round pick. You know, you got to protect Russell Wilson. He can't be scrambling and running for his life every single play. I think a guy like Braden Nelson, who has incredible versatility, is the pick here. It's an easy pick if I'm the Seattle Seahawks and if Smith is still there. Going to pick number 21, we have the Baltimore Ravens, the three positions in need. I have his wide receiver, offensive line, and potentially running back. I was a big fan of Kenneth Dixon, so I think once he comes back with what they have there, and Alex Collins is playing really well, running back, they're fine. But, I mean, Darius Geis, I wouldn't rule that one out. So for wide receiver, I'm actually selecting Deon Cain, the wide receiver from Clemson. Again, very prolific wide receiver in college. You know, you probably could debatably say Clemson is becoming wide receiver U with all the wide receivers of, you know, who I got, Sammy Watkins, Mike Williams, Artavis Bryant, DeAndre Hopkins. I know I'm probably forgetting a couple obvious ones off the top of my head. But, you know, Deon Cain is very much another guy in that tutelage, in that history of those great wide receivers. And when you look at what the Baltimore Ravens have at wide receiver, you got an old man in Mike Wallace who's serviceable. You got Perryman, who's, you know, I think it's safe now to say Perryman was a bust. But Wallace is set to be a free agent. You probably don't want to pay him what he's going to want to at his age. You got, you know, Jerry Maclin. Yeah, he's something. He's not anything great. So if I am the Baltimore Ravens, I may look at re-signing Alex Collins, and I would draft our wide receiver right now. I think Deon Cain will be a tremendous pick. Relatively safe. I don't see high bust potential on Deon Cain either. I think he's a guy that's a wide receiver 2 as a rookie, could very well develop into a wide receiver 1. It's a win-win for the Baltimore Ravens. Moving on to pick number 22, the Tennessee Titans. For their pick, either three needs, either best player available. They've built their team up very, very well. They've had buttloads. We're trying to keep it PC so we don't get demonetized here. They've had plenty of picks over the last couple of years. So they've, you know, not a whole lot of glaring holes, but I really think maybe defensive line or edge, get more pressure on the quarterback. You got a Rakpos getting up there in age. So either selecting Harold Landry, the edge rusher from Boston College, very much will be a 3-4 outside linebacker. Don't really ask him to drop back into coverage too much, but he is, you know, 250 pounds, athletic enough that he should be able to take over for, you know, some underachievers. A Rakpos getting up there in age, and really, what has Derek Morgan ever done? Kevin Dodd, yeah, you know, I mean, I'm not going to discredit them because I don't watch a whole lot of Titans games, but all I do know is the Tennessee Titans could definitely use another edge rusher when the roster is relatively as safely built as it is right now. There's not a whole lot of glaring issues. That's where I would go. I would go best edge rusher available. Harold Landry at 22, depending on some people's positional rankings, could be an absolute steal. And I mean, you know, I really do like the GM there in Tennessee, and I think he would jump all over the opportunity of getting Harold Landry at pick number 22. Going to number 23, it's the Buffalo Bills once again, and their, you know, the three position needs stay the same. Wide receiver, offensive line, really outside linebacker, or improving that front four of the defensive line, front three, sorry, of the defensive line. So I am selecting Daron Payne, the defensive lineman from Alabama. I think he's going to be one of these guys that, you know, people right now are like, yeah, he's probably a first-round talent. I think he's going to test very, very well for a guy that is as big as he is. You know, not as productive as Jonathan Allen was, but I think he's a better athlete. I think he has a little bit maybe more upside, not as finished of a product. This is what you need. You move on from Marcel Darius. You got old man Kyle Williams there. I think that defensive line, you know, right now, debatably, I mean, Adolphus Washington, I think Daron Payne's better. You have Cedric Thornton, who was really good by Philadelphia Eagles. He's better. So, you know, you look at that defense, I think Sean McDermott's want to get his own guys there, get his own imprint on the defense, and a tremendous way of starting that off. Well, I mean, starting off, the building to what you added with Tre'Davious White, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, all playing very, very well right now, will be to go out and get Daron Payne and place him right there in the middle of that 4-3 defense. He was right the first time. All right, moving on to pick number 24. So Bradley Chubb to the Lions at 19 was pretty surprising. This one here might be the biggest one. At number 24, and this is terrifying, absolutely terrifying, we have the Atlanta Falcons, who their three positions in need I have as defensive line, corner, or best player available. We have them taking best player available. I was selecting Derwin James, the safety from Florida State. Now, thinking about Derwin James and Keanu Neal as a safety tandem in the NFL is terrifying. You know, a little bit different than maybe Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor in terms of their play styles, but in terms of upside and the potential for these guys just to take over the league in the secondary is immense, with Des Trufant there as well. That is, like, it's a fantasy world. That's like a fantasy draft pick. Like, Derwin James is sitting here at 24. I think that Dan Quinn's like, yeah, you know, we might want to get a linebacker We might want to get an offensive lineman. Yeah, no, we're getting Derwin James, and we're going to put him back there with Keanu O'Neal, and we're going to watch teams just be terrified to throw the ball across the middle. So I think that's an awesome pick. Very surprised Derwin James fell this far, but I mean, his production this year has dipped a little bit, but he's going to be another one of those dudes at the combine. His numbers are going to go like Arden Key. We go, oh yeah, this guy's terrifyingly good athlete. We can work with him. We can mold him into the, the technician and stuff like that. It will come, but the athlete is there. Derwin James to Falcons. That might be my favorite pick, as well as like a really surprising pick that he fell that far. All right, going to pick number 25. We have the Carolina Panthers, who are livid that Derwin James just won a pick before, because their needs, defensive back, linebacker, and wide receiver. I just have linebacker because Kuechly has been getting concussions, and God, what's his name? I can't believe it. Thomas Davis is getting pretty old. But at this point, I'm selecting Ronnie Harrison, the safety from Alabama. I mean, Mike Adams is a Band-Aid. Kurt Coleman is good but inconsistent. Let's be honest, I think Kurt Coleman's been playing above his pay grade, I guess, if that's the metaphor and the saying that we'll use. I think getting a guy like Ronnie Harrison, who's a legit first-round safety, younger, upside, it's an easy pick. Add him on the defense there. Get younger on the defense, which I definitely think is something that the Panthers need to do. Best player available, the Ronnie Harrison. Going to pick number 26 for the LA Rams. Their three positions in need. I have offensive line, corner, and then best player available on the defense as they try to get up that old Wade Field defense. So I am selecting Tarvaris McFadden, the corner from Florida State. We don't know if Tremaine Johnson is going to return or not. He's going to be very, very expensive. I would assume they're going to try their best to return him, but outside of that, if he's gone, their secondary is... Their secondary, what do they have? Nickel Roby Coleman. I think he's only even there on a one-year deal. So outside of that, the cornerback spot, Kayvon Webster... They have to get a corner. I think either way, they have to get a corner. I think Tarvaris McFadden, after Josh Jackson, is probably the best guy. I mean, there's Denzel Ward from Ohio State, a couple other guys, but I think personally Josh Jackson is one, and then I have Tarvaris McFadden at number 2. So that'd be a great pick there for the Rams. All right, going to pick number 27 with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Three position need: quarterback, offensive line, and tight end. And here we go. I was selecting Baker Mayfield, the quarterback from Oklahoma. Why not? Last time that Coughlin was with the Jags, he got some guys with some off-the-field issues named Keaton Cardell. More so Jimmy Smith. Gave him opportunity. I think the same kind of thing could happen for Baker Mayfield. I think Coughlin could see, a guy like that is known to be able to build some Super Bowl teams. They just can't keep having Bortles shooting themselves in the foot. They need a guy that can make the occasional big play. Hopefully will be able to sign Allen Robinson and just let the defense do their work and get some sparks here and there. I think you might be able to get that in Baker Mayfield. Personally, I definitely could see Baker Mayfield not being a first-round quarterback, but if he is, I think the Jags makes a whole lot of sense. If the Jags can't trade for an Alex Smith type or Eli Manning potentially, I think that's pretty far-fetched. But like I said, this whole draft's done the assumption that nothing happened in free agency, no trades or anything like that. I think Baker Mayfield at this point makes sense for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'd rather Baker Mayfield on my team than Blake Bortles. Easy as that. So yeah, moving on to pick number 28. We have the New Orleans Saints, who are the three position need for me: wide receiver, quarterback, and best player available on the defense. So I have them going with said best player available on the defense, and that is Clelin Ferrell, the defensive end from Clemson. I think that, you had Alex Okafor, who's solid, but he's only there on a one-year deal. Find yourself a partner for Mr. Cameron Jordan. I think a guy like Clelin Ferrell, 28, debatably slipped a couple picks. They go best player available. That's an easy pick. Jordan Cameron, Sheldon Rankins, and Clelin Ferrell on that defensive line. That is a defense that if you get Drew Brees coming back for another year, that's a defense that, maybe if Marshall Latimer goes down, they don't fall apart. If you have that kind of a front three of your front four are those guys, so Clelin Ferrell to the Saints makes a lot of sense for me, going best player available on the defensive side of the ball. Going to pick number 29. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers. There are three positions for me: tight end, quarterback, and best player available. I've been going with the best tight end in the draft, in my opinion, and that is Mark Andrews, the tight end from Oklahoma. I think he can do it all. A guy that can chip in the run, more athletic than Jesse James, better hands than Jesse James, and just adds another dimension to that offense. Obviously, if Ben Roethlisberger decides to retire or something like that in the offseason, that completely throws the kink into things, but I'm going on the assumption that he is going to return. And either you throw in Mark Andrews there with Juju Smith-Schuster, Antonio Brown, Eli Rogers, whoever they're going to have at wide receiver. I assume that Martavis Bryant will be gone in free agency. That's looking mint with Lev Bell, of course. So I think Mark Andrews at the tight end spot is a good pick, good fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Going to pick number 30, which is the New England Patriots. Their three positions in need for me. I have offensive tackle, linebacker, and safety. I was selecting Rashad Evans, the linebacker from Alabama, who's kind of, anytime you see an Alabama linebacker, they're going to probably go day 1, day 2. He's kind of really exploded into first-round territory after his play this season. It's a Bill Belichick pick right here. Safe linebacker. When you look at the depth right now at the linebacking core for the New England Patriots, it's not that great. I mean, obviously, when healthy, you're going to have Hightower back there. But outside of that, Van Noy, serviceable. David Harris, kind of a band-aid. Landon Roberts is not bad, but Landon Roberts. He's a 6th-round pick. So I think getting a guy, another Alabama linebacker, intelligent linebacker, a sure tackler, fits into, Bill Belichick likes his Alabama players. So that encompassed with the kind of player that Evans is, it's a fairly easy pick here for the New England Patriots. So you get yourself a linebacker. Going to pick number 31, we have the Minnesota Vikings. Through 3 position needs. I have his offensive guard, defensive tackle, and linebacker. So I have them selecting Maurice Hurst, the defensive tackle from Michigan. Mo Hurst, very, very well-rounded, can do a lot of things right. Much as it pains me to say, Sharif Floyd might not ever play again. That's a story within itself. It wasn't like a botched surgery or something like that. But you look at the Vikings. They're a team that, you're not going to change what they are. They're going to be a defensive team for now, forever. Get that guy that can go in there next to Linval Jones. So I think Jaleel Johnson's a good rotational guy, not so much a starter. Tom Johnson is, again, a rotational guy. I think if you get a guy like Mo Hurst, that changes it, man. Hunter, Griffin, Linval Joseph, Mo Hurst, that is a defensive front that's even better than what it is right now. I mean, linebacker would be interesting here to get another linebacker back there with Kendricks and Barr. But I feel like when you look at this team, not a whole lot of holes on the Vikings. It's tough to know what's going on with the quarterback spot because obviously we don't know what's happening with Teddy Bridgewater. We don't know what's happening with Sam Bradford. So there's a lot of uncertainty there. Quarterback, I wouldn't rule that out if some quarterback slipped or something like that. I mean, there's just too much uncertainty to really comment on the quarterback spot. So when I look at the next spot, get a guy that can just help that defense continue to carry them through games until they figure out what's going on at that QB spot. Mo Hurst can be that dude. Finish up the draft at pick 32. We have my Philadelphia Eagles. 3 position needs for the Eagles. I have offensive tackle, linebacker, and best player available. Now, this is one of those things where, for me, I would trade away. I would trade down. We don't have a 2nd or 3rd round pick. I would flip this right now for like a 2nd and a 3rd or something instantly. I'd do that like that. But assuming there's no trades, there's no linebacker here. Like right now, when you look at the linebackers, you probably have like Jerome Baker potentially from Ohio State. You have some wide receivers. If we lose Alshon Jeffrey, potentially there could be a Christian Kirk play or something like that. But for what we know, we know that Jason Peters probably won't be back. If he does come back, he might slide into guard or something like that. Vaitai is serviceable. He's great depth. I don't think he's the future at left tackle. So I'm going to go with Chukwuma Okorafor, the offensive tackle from Western Michigan. Incredibly athletic and could very well play both positions, which gives you the flexibility in case you do want to move Lane Johnson to left tackle in the offseason. You can put Okorafor there at the right tackle spot. But the Philadelphia Eagles right now, looking at this roster, obviously we don't know what's going to happen in free agency. There's not a lot of holes, which is good to say. Good to say. It's so good for me as an Eagle fan to do a mock draft to not say we have to go after defensive backs right away. So yeah, I just think we go top tackle available. I mean, unless someone slips, you never know, man, what the draft's going to hold. Maybe Orlando Brown slips. That's probably the only guy that I think could slip. I don't think McGlinchey or Connor Williams are going to have a chance there. But I think Okorafor, athletic, which is what we really kind of want. Also, not athletic enough that he can't be a mauler, because it does seem like Doug Pearson likes his offensive lineman to be just bigger and better than other players. But I think Okorafor makes sense right now for the Philadelphia Eagles at 32, because when I look at that team, I just say there's uncertainty at the tackle spot. And we don't know what's going to happen with Alshon, for example, in the future. It's tough because I know right now, before the Ajayi trade, Darius Geis is still on the board. Bryce Love, if he declares, is on the board. Those are 2 big names that we could potentially go after. But I think Okorafor is the safest pick. So there you go, guys. That is my first mock draft. We're almost at 45 goddamn minutes. So I appreciate all you guys that have sat through this. Hopefully, you agree with some of my picks if you're a fan. I posted on Twitter, getting questions, kind of getting feedback of where fans want to go. But let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my picks here. I'd appreciate it if it's your first time stopping by, to hit that subscribe button. Smash the like button if you enjoyed, as I said. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.